study,
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
The best of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burning Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy, Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. This is the Friggin Farm Ranch Report for Wednesday, June 10th. All the numbers are coming from yesterday because I'm not much of a breaking news type of guy. I gotta have some time to digest and see what the hell we got going on. Anyway, we're gonna touch on the screwworm stuff some more. Keep you updated. We got some coverage into the Packers and some public land issues. And then we'll also talk a little bit about a helicopter being shot down. Luckily, nobody hurt, seems like. And anyway, so if you make your living on a horse, in a tractor, or with a wrench, this kind of your daily show for you. It's the Friggin Farm and Ranch Report. Anyway. Before we get into the show, please make sure you go like and subscribe and rate and review and follow, whatever the terminology is. Just go find me on the social media platforms. I'm on all the podcast apps. Spotify's the main one. That's also the one that pays me the most for the ad revenue. But if you don't like the ads, head over to burningdaylight.substack.com. That is the best way to support the show. You get the transcript of this episode with links embedded. It's an immersive type of deal that I've got going on over there for these shows, and also you get access to the Burning Daylight Report dashboard, which I use to put this show together, as well as my horse app, A Man About a Horse, which is attempting to put some sort of definitions on the various horse markets throughout the country. Anyway, it's all pretty cool stuff, and it's all over there at burningdaylight.substack.com. All right, let's talk some cattle and markets here. So on the futures side, August live cattle closed out at $252.50. That was up $1.80. October was at $248.25. That was up $1.50. On the feeder cattle, they were up $2.50 on the day, closed out at $353.90. Where am I at? $353.90. September at $350.25. That was up $275. Lean hogs on the day, they've been kind of bleeding lower. $97.20, and they closed down 73 cents on the day. So live cattle spent most of Tuesday trading lower early on the screwworm news, and they found their feet and pushed higher into the close. It's classic sell to open by the dip kind of day. Feeders were stronger the whole way, and they finished $2 to $3 ahead across the board. And the CME feeder cattle index is now sitting at 367.01 as of June 5th. Lean hogs are the weak leg, though. The front month hogs at 97.20. That was off about about 75 cents on the day, not quite 75, down 73. And that curve is leaking lower. The packers are not chasing pigs the way they're chasing cattle. And the takeaway there is the futures are finally starting to act like cattle are tight. The paper will keep swinging around on the screw worm headlines and technicals and weather, but we're still in a short cattle, long capacity type of world. On the cash cattle side, there we go. Okay, the 5 area weekly weighted, that was week ending of the 7th. 256.47 was the live average. The dressed at 404.73. For the steers, you're coming in at 256.53, and the heifers at 256.38. Steer dressed delivered at 404.66, and the heifers at 405.06 per hundredweight. So cash is holding stout. The board took a $10 haircut from the front month, and cash did not move like that at all. So this is a gap that you want to watch. When the board and the cash diverge this much, something has to give. Either the cash comes off or the board stops bleeding and finds the cash. And right now the packers are still having to bid up to move cattle through the front door because there just ain't enough of them to go around. They can't be stingy because the whole industry is stingy right now because there's just not that many cattle. Over on the sale barn side, so on the 20 markets that I follow on my dashboard, we've got so on those 20 we had 16,720 total head, national average at 406.51 for the week. So a little lighter run than last week. Beaver County stockyards there in Oklahoma on the 9th, they had 3,735 head, averaging 862, bringing 353.89, 100 weight on average. F&T livestock there in Missouri. Let's see, where are we at? Fallon, we had a 430-pound average, bringing 560.03. Callaway, Missouri, 553 average, 489.19. Fredonia, Kansas at 553 average, bringing 466.09. F&T there in Missouri, 553 average at 459.31. Looking at some other notable runs, let's see any bigger runs that we got. Here we go. Gainesville livestock there in Missouri, 34.03. They average at 489.19. So what the table what all this is telling me is that the lighter calves, so 550 and under, those are bringing in the 445 to 489 range, and the heavier 8 to 9 weight cattle are down in the 328, 356. So weight is discounting, lightness is paying, and the better managed and tighter pins are still bringing top dollar. And the front month on the live cattle futures, they dropped $10.38, but Callaway there in Missouri printed a 489.19 on 553 pound cattle. The board is having one conversation, the barn is having another. So pay attention to the barn, because those are real bids on real cattle, real dollars changing hands for actual animals, and not just paper. So you got the board whipping around $2 or $3, but the barn's been steadily just like, hey, light cattle are gold. We're gonna the heavier ones are not selling as hot, but anything like under 600 pounds is just and especially good quality, they are really paying up for. Quality cattle are still bringing a premium. Green and work done calves are paying, and then the off kind or stale or just poorer quality cattle are getting punished a little bit. The board is a weather vane, and the barn is the weatherman. I don't know if I like that analogy or not, but anyway, I pay attention to what the cash market's bringing, because that is the true market. Not that the futures is not useful and necessary, but when the actual money changes hands, that is the market there. On the grain side of things, as of yesterday's close, July corn 4.20 3/4. That was up 2 cents. July wheat 5.88. 5.88 a bushel. That was up 5 cents. 4 3/4. About. On the soybeans, 11.65 a bushel. That was down 2 to 3 cents. National cash beans at 10.56 a bushel. So corn's pretty cheap by recent history, but we probably put in at least a short-term floor. USDA's outlook still screams ample supplies with big stocks and no panic. Wheat is trying to bounce off of 3-year lows, and the beans are kind of just staggering sideways while everybody watches South American crop estimates and the U.S. weather. Over on the energy side, that Hormuz price risk is still baked in hard. Brent crude closed about 95 bucks a barrel. That was down from 97.15 yesterday, so 95.06 on Tuesday, 97.15 on Monday. What is the West Texas index at? WTI. For those in the know, where the hell is my? I'm not seeing my West Texas numbers here. I don't know. Anyway, but your Brent's trading at 95. I would imagine the West Texas in the low 90s. But we got still a mess over there, so don't expect that to change a whole lot. On the AAA weighted average, or the national average, diesel's at 530.03. The EIA estimates at 521. So down another 14 cents this week. That's good. We'll see how this latest helicopter shoot down affects all of that. But Brent crude set down a little bit this morning already, the $92 a barrel. So maybe there's something going on. We'll see on that. But on the war reel side, I think, is this the... Yeah, here we go. I don't know what this RBOB... I'm not sure what that is, but they're saying 307 a gallon. I don't know where that number came from. That's seems like a bunch of horse shit, because... Yeah, the EIA average of diesel is 520. AAA average regular unleaded's at 415 a gallon. So it's down 11 cents, which is good. Like to see that keep on slipping lower. But I don't know what this number is here in the middle. So I'm gonna cover it up before we move on. All right, let's get to the war real quick. There was an Apache helicopter down near the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Army AH-64 Apache attack helicopter went down on the Strait of Hormuz while on patrol over the water off of Oman. Both crew members were rescued and reported safe and not seriously injured. President Trump is not calling this an accident. He said publicly that Iran shot the helicopter down and that the United States must respond. U.S. officials are telling the press that preliminary assessments indicate that an Iranian one-way Shahed drone hit the Apache. CENTCOM already answered. So on Tuesday evening, U.S. forces launched airstrikes on targets inside Iran, billed as self-defense operations and a measured response to the shoot-down. Iran is claiming counterattacks on U.S. forces and talking tough for their own audience. And for the first time ever, we had a drone shoot down a helicopter and then another drone rescue the crew. So we had an unmanned surface vessel or a drone boat rescued the Apache crew, shuttled them back up safely to a pickup point. So we got one drone knocking down a helicopter and then another drone taking the pilots out of the water. So that is the future of warfare, I guess. Kind of weird. So why does that care for you? Well, that helicopter didn't go down in a training area off the Gulf of Texas. It went down in one of the choke points for the world's oil, as we've been talking about ad nauseum for a couple months. So every time the U.S. and Iran, every time we trade shots with Iran over Hormuz, the risk premium on crude and diesel stays glued to the top of your fuel bill. And this isn't a minor incident. We got the sitting president saying Iran shot us down, and we're hitting the Iran back in return. That's how you get sticky high fuel prices and shaky trade flows after the headlines move on. So when you see your diesel at now at $5.20 a gallon, and the fertilizer bouncing back way high again, some of that is the helicopter and the tit for tat baked into every pound of urea, every ton of urea, every barrel of oil that passes through there or doesn't pass through that choke point. So, long story short, there's still no ceasefire and doesn't seem to be one on the horizon anytime soon. We'll see. All right, let's move it back home here to stateside. On the screwworm update, it is spreading. Turns out flies fly and they move around. We got a second calf in Zavala County. All right, so USDA APHIS confirmed New World screwworm and a three-week-old calf in Zavala County, Texas on the 3rd. With larvae in the umbilical area. They now added a second calf in Zavala County about 6 miles away. A calf in LaSalle County. We got a dog in Andrews County out in oil country in West Texas. And as of yesterday, there's another calf in LaSalle County. So we got five confirmed cases in the U.S. right now. APHIS and Texas Animal Health Commission have laid out 20-kilometer infested zones with quarantines, inspections at road checkpoints, and paperwork on livestock leaving those areas. They are ramping up sterile fly releases in Mexico and the border zones and dropping traps like crazy. The USDA's line is food supply is safe and the risk is low, which is fine as far as that goes. But for the ranchers in South Texas and the Southwest, the real risk is getting this thing into wildlife and dogs, and the government being 2 steps behind a bug that can fly. So this thing has a chance to really spread, and most likely will. And I guess my read on all of this is not changed a whole lot from when I did my big episode on it last week. I think it's going to be a busy summer and fall for guys down in South Texas, New Mexico area, and probably east of there as this hopefully doesn't spread much, but it's probably going to spread. The good news is we got a lot better tools than we had back in the day, and any of you cowboys out there that want to make a hand, it's probably going to be some be some work to be had down that part of the world. As far as the government response, we talked about this Bellinger fella yesterday. I hope he does a good job. I'm not rooting against him by any means, but I don't know. This seems like another one of Donald Trump's shitty cabinet picks. Even he's not a cabinet member, but this is a packing industry, food safety guy. But there's no food safety risk. So why do we have a food safety guy at the head of it? Like let's get some like working ranchers. Let's get some entomologists and somebody that knows how to contain this stuff. And maybe that food safety stuff gives him a unique advantage on putting this together. I don't know, maybe, like I said, but it still seems like an odd choice. So keep that in mind. I don't really have too much on there, but if you're in that area, you probably ought to be checking your cattle daily and more often if you can. Especially if you got calves dropping. I know it's a little kind of late for Kevin down that area, but in the brush country, you have calves dropping year round. So check the navels and any wounds on your calves daily. Screwworm wounds are rapidly enlarging, foul-smelling, and full of maggots boring into the live tissue. So know what county your cattle are leaving and entering, and if they're in that infested zone, movement's going to be slower and more expensive and way more bureaucratic. The board has already traded this both ways. Feeders rallied hard on the first Texas confirmation, and then cattle futures sold off when more cases came out and USDA said, we've got it here. So paper traders see a headline, but you guys on the ranch see a whole new line of risk and regulation there. So biggest thing is to stay on top of your cattle. Just make sure if you do find a case, like get that thing treated. Let the people know that are dropping flies around there to, hey, got one here. I would imagine, so the case from yesterday was about 6 miles away from the initial case, so they've got overlapping 20 kilometer. And again, I don't know why they went kilometers. We don't use kilometers here, so unless you're military guys will know. But like, how many miles is that? It's so yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing? Sounds like a bunch of nonsense. But anyways, stay on top of that. If this gets into pets and particularly wildlife, it could really spread. So anyway, if you got cattle in that part of the world, be vigilant. Be vigilant. All right. There we go. That was just talked about that. If you do have cattle in those areas, it's going to be a little tough when you take them to sale. You're probably going to get discounted, kind of the same way. Like if you're in that greater Yellowstone area with the brucellosis zone, you're probably going to get docked a little bit just because of where your cattle are and nothing else. All right, so on the packer capacity side, the big packers are hungry right now. They got more hooks and fewer cattle. USDA ERS says that since 2021, at least 7 firms have announced new beef packing plants and four more expansions, potentially adding over 13,000 head per day of capacity. So that's about 3.3 million head a year. And another industry recap counts 4 new plants coming online in 2025 and 2026 alone, with almost 9,000 head a day capacity. But at that same time, Tyson is closing its beef plant in Lexington, Nebraska. That's about 3,200 jobs and about 5,000 head a day capacity. And they're cutting a shift at the Amarillo plant that affects another 1,700 workers. The LMIC projects 2026 commercial cattle slaughter at 26.5 million head. That's about 10.5% below 2025, and 23% under 2022. Holy shit. That's a big drop. Analysts say that packer margins are being driven by throughput, and the battle is to find enough cattle to keep the chains full, but not to find somebody willing to buy beef. Like, the beef demand is there. For your ranchers and your feeders, the short cattle against the big packers gives you leverage. So they have to bid it up to keep the plants full, but plant closures or shift cuts blow up a local basis. So if your closest major plant goes dark, you're suddenly negotiating with fewer buyers, and no matter what the national average says. So your mainstream ag press wants to frame the new plants as competition, and that may be true. I guess it is true to some extent, but if those plants are financed with tax dollars and plugged into the same branded beef supply chains and captive supply agreements as the big four, you didn't break the cartel, we just gave it a few new hooks to deal with. So keep an eye on that. I think it's kind of a unique time for ranchers where they actually do have some leverage at the moment, but those packers know what they're doing too, and they I don't like to give them credit a whole lot, but they do kind of know what they're doing. They're pretty good at it. All right, so we have some potential wins on the horizon as far as BLM and public lands grazing goes. On May 12th, BLM proposed a new grazing rule covering about 155 million acres of public land, and the Interior Department moved to scrap the Biden's public land rule that opened the door to conservation leases that displace grazers. BLM says this rule will, one, it'll apply land health standards across all programs, that's including grazing, oil and gas, and recreation, so your cattle don't get blamed for everything. It's gonna, they say it's gonna streamline renewals and drought response. They also say it's gonna automatically stay a grazing decision if you appeal it, meaning that if your AUMs get cut, that doesn't necessarily bite while you're fighting it. So, like, if you appeal it, your AUMs will stay as they will stay as they were before, while that process plays out in court, and you don't have to automatically lose the numbers there. So the comment period is open, and it's scheduled to close on July 13, and there is a virtual info session on June 11th, so that's tomorrow. So I would highly recommend that you go watch that. We'll try to tune into it. But here's the catch, though. So nothing in the rule changes. Nothing in this rule change changes the legal reality that your permit is a privilege and not a deed. Supreme Court decisions like the Public Lands Council versus Babbitt still give the BLM broad discretion to cut AUMs and yank permits and claim ownership of improvements. So there is a good wind at our back, especially killing the public lands rule, but it's still the same federal gun behind the counter. So the law itself has not changed, and the next administration could flip that rule right back to where it was. So use the comment period while the wind is in our favor. If you don't, I guarantee you all those militant bunny huggers are going to be in the comment section. All of your big time outfits will be in the comments. But if you run cattle on BLM ground, you need to be in the comments, making your case heard before this comment period closes, because if you don't, then you're going to get drowned out by all the people that want to take your cattle off the land for good. So make your voice heard. If I've learned anything about anything from Wes McKinley, is if you make enough noise, eventually they're gonna have to address you. So make some noise in that comment section there in the comment window for this rule change. So make sure you do it. It is important. Also, we got a potential win on from the EPA, which is that hasn't been a case in a long time. So in February, EPA issued guidance saying that the Clean Air Act does not require manufacturers to lock you out of the tools and software you need to repair non-road diesel equipment, including tractors, combines, and loaders. Basically, they said temporary overrides of emission systems are lawful when they're done to repair and restore proper function. OEMs can't hide behind the EPA to say we're not allowed to give access to diagnostics and repair information. So it doesn't solve every software lock or contract clause, but it knocks a major leg out from under the argument that federal law forbids you from fixing what you own. This could be really big if, out in farm country, if you got a brand new John Deere, you can't work on it, and you got to wait for the John Deere mechanic to get out there. So they can use their special tools and computer to beep, bop, boop around and clean out that stupid diesel exhaust filter or whatever else the case may be. And then, if anything, I've noticed anything, it was like people will be able to they'll be able to make a cheap version of whatever tool or software it is once it becomes available, and so it could be big news for your local farmer or rancher and your local mechanics that didn't go to that John Deere school. They don't have the official title. So that could be good, and that the big companies are going to fight this, but hopefully they don't win. We got the avian flu now confirmed in dairy cattle in Idaho and Texas. 15 dairies total over the last month. USDA and state vets say. USDA and state vets say affected milk is being diverted and destroyed, and there's no food safety concern in the commercial milk supply. A small number of workers exposed to infected animals have tested positive, but there's no sustained person-to-person spread. OSHA and CDC guidance is PPE, careful handling of sick or dead animals, and watching for flu-like symptoms and eye irritation after exposure. We've been through this thing before. It's not cuts milk production down a lot. It's a big deal to the dairy world, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. They don't lose. I don't know if they lost any cattle from the bird flu, but it does hammer the milk production quite a bit. Anyway, it's something to keep an eye on. If you're shipping culls into plants that handle a lot of dairy, expect more biosecurity questions and protocols, even if you are running beef cattle. All right. On this day in history, June 10th, 1901, Cheyenne, Wyoming, the state engineer pulled together a meeting with other Western engineers to talk about a big multi-state irrigation projects. Those ideas fed directly into Francis Newland's Reclamation Act of 1902, which put the federal government in the business of building dams and canals across the West, including projects that still control water in Nevada's Newlands project today. So that's why the federal government has so much power over dams and reservoirs and stuff. On June 10th, 1920, the Congress passed the Federal Water Power Act. now known as the Federal Power Act, which created the Federal Power Commission to license hydropower on navigable rivers and federal lands. So this law still sits behind decisions about big dams and hydropower flows and how much water runs for electricity versus irrigation. So on this date, two different years, D.C. wrote itself into the middle of Western water and power, and over a century later, we're still feeling it every time we talk allotments and project water. On the sports side of things, A's won another offensive explosion. They beat the Brewers 7-5. It did not go into extra innings. But the A's had 5 home runs. Kurtz hit one, Soderstrom hit one, Heim hit one, Geloff hit one. I forget who hit the other one. Brewers had one of their own, but JT again gave up 5 runs, but pretty solid performance considering he kept all but one in the park. So solid performance. I did not watch the hockey game. Let me pull up the score real quick. Carolina ties it up in Game 4. They beat the Vegas Golden Knights 5-3. So that series is tied at 2. Game 5 will be tomorrow in Vegas before it heads back to Carolina. Game 4 of the NBA Finals will be, I think it's tonight. Yes. Knicks lead that series 2-1. All right, let's talk a little recap before we get out of here. Cattle futures finished higher on the live and the feeder cattle side, both, while the hogs leaked and grains tried to put in some sort of floor. Cash cattle are holding stout, and the sale barns still say that quality still sells. We've got at least 5 confirmed screwworm cases in Texas and a dog case out of West Texas and New Mexico. I guess the animal itself is from New Mexico, but they visited the vet in Texas. So quarantines and sterile fly release are ramping up there. Packers are juggling more hooks and fewer cattle. They're closing plants in one place while building them in another. And they're still holding more cards than they should. BLM's new grazing rule is the friendliest we've had in quite some time, and the public lands rule is headed for the trash can, but your permit isn't a deed, so get your comments in while the door is open. That is very important. EPA accidentally did something useful and said you can, in fact, repair your own equipment without being treated like a common criminal. So that's nice. And then halfway around the world, we had an Apache go down near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is being blamed, and we're already trading shots back and forth, which is the primary reason why your diesel is north of $5 a gallon. So that's what I got for you today. We'll be back tomorrow with some more. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you go like and subscribe, and do all that good stuff. BurningDaylight.substack.com is the best way to support the show. And move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.